is getting more advice today than we need to see.
Oh, I don't think that's true at all. We were there the 1st of June, so only 2 weeks later, and then had just those like lightweight packables.
Very good. This meeting of the Board of Education is now called to order. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everybody to our meeting, and feel free to stay here for the entire meeting if you so wish. I've got to let you know that Ian Hamilton sends her regrets this evening, and we'll get started by approving our agenda on page 2. Is there a motion, please?
President Van Antwerp, I make the motion that the Board of Education approve the agenda as printed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Very good. We'll move forward. Superintendent's report, Mark.
Well, thank you, Randy. We've entered that time of the year when there are a lot of recognitions taking place at individual buildings and throughout the district, and it includes the Board of Education. So we're here today to recognize some educators, and to do that honor is our Director of Educational Supports and Intervention is Dr. Janine Matson-Gearhart.
Coming back to the board meeting next week. Thank you, Superintendent Beeling and trustees. It is my favorite day of the year to come here to introduce you to two phenomenal teachers. Both teachers have won the KRESA Parent Advisory Committee's Excellent in Special Education Awards. It is sponsored by parents who are on a committee throughout the Kalamazoo County. These awards honor teachers and other school personnel who have gone above and beyond their role in educating and supporting students with an individual educational program. So my pleasure is going to be first to introduce you to Jennifer Renier. So Jennifer, if you want to come on. I'm going to read a little bit about you first.
Okay.
Stand right here. Not behind me
Oh,
here,
okay.
right here. Thanks. Jennifer was nominated by two people, Stephanie Brown-Boyer and Christina D'Arcy, and a whole slew of Amberley family over there as well. So we host a KRESA classroom, and Jennifer has been an inclusionist from the beginning and works with all of our students to make sure that they have the best experience in the general education setting. First part of the peer-to-peer program that you may have heard us talk about in the building. She uses a range of strategies and interventions to provide the least restrictive environment for all students. She's very collaborative and loved by the parents as well as all of the Amberley family. So Jennifer, I could have gone on and on about her. We had like 2 pages. So Jennifer, this is for you. So thank you very much on behalf of our students.
Thank you.
We're very proud of you. Should have made the Amberley people all get up. Next time. Okay. The second award winner that I would like to introduce you to is Emily Armand. Emily, if you want to come on. So Emily was nominated by Kaylin Newhouse, who is a teacher or a student here at Central High School. She works here at Central High School. She's been here for 2 years, although I just told her it feels like she's been here a little longer because we've had a lot of good times together. Kaylin reports that Emily is very nice and very funny. She's very gracious. She helps me with my work. Kaylin says she makes me feel comfortable and safe in her classroom. And you planned or will be planning a trip to the Air Zoo.
We did, we went.
You went to the Air Zoo, oh good, well, because this was written in March, so I'm glad that came true for her, for Kaylin. And Emily also sends another student over to the administration building for a work-based learning experience, who we fondly refer to as the mayor. And so thank you for sharing that student with us. And thank you very much on behalf of all of us here at Portage Public Schools. You're wonderful. Take pictures out to the side. Wraps up this part of the board meeting.
Great.
So I'm going.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, and thank you for being here this evening. Our recipients and our nominees and supporters, thank you very much for your presence. There's going to be a very short update on our building construction project, and you can wait for just like 2 minutes, and you'll hear that, and then you can go take your pictures. I'm going to give you an audience, Johnny.
I thought it was going to be 20 minutes today. Thank you, Superintendent Lang, as well as members of the Board of Education. Just very quickly, at Central L, if you drive past, you'll see they're spraying foam on the exterior of the building, which is the foundational work for laying the exterior brick veneer. Right now, you'll see that much of the brick veneer is around the height of a windowsill. On the inside, which you obviously can't see from the exterior, they're constructing the masonry walls, interior walls. The steel contractor is now working on the canopy frame and finishing the steel roof deck. We've also poured some concrete on the first floor in the large restrooms, in the small restrooms, storage rooms, and stairways. On the second floor at Central L, radiant tubing is almost complete, and we anticipate the pouring of the second floor by the end of this week or early next week. We also have some metal stud framing going, and then MEP rough ends, which is mechanical, electrical, plumbing installation. And lastly, on the first floor, we have door frames being delivered this week, and those will be installed. At Haverhill, we're currently working on the second floor with some block bearing. The MEP underground work has been completed in most of the school. Radiant flooring is also being installed on the first floor at this time. We're waiting on an inspection soon for backfill and final grading. The steel crew is now working on the canopy at Haverhill as well. And 6 truckloads of joist and deck are being delivered today, and the second floor structural steel later this week. I would like to invite the board, or offer the board, now that the weather is warming up, if the board desires to take a guided tour to see the construction sites, and we can accommodate the board at a time that works best for everyone. Then moving over to Woodland, we have now completed our schematic design phase for Woodland. The preliminary cost came 0.1% over the predicted budget allocation. Given that small amount, we felt comfortable moving into the design development phase. There will be parity between Haverhill, Central, and Woodland. So the actual design is further developed at Woodland as compared to Central and Haverhill at the same point, given that Tower, Pinkster, and Woodland and Fielding is carrying forward the designs from the first 2 schools. We've held our first design development meeting. We reviewed that design statement, the site design, exterior elevations, and the interior architecture. We will be holding follow-up meetings. We held follow-up meetings with the principal, food service staff, art teacher, music teacher, PE teacher, and librarian. They were all impressed with the direction of those spaces. Our next design development meeting is Friday. We will be meeting with the Woodland staff over the next couple of weeks to tighten up some areas, and then at one of the 2 board meetings in June, we plan to make a formal presentation to unveil the direction of the school to the school board. So, be happy to answer any questions you might have about Central, Haverhill, or Woodland.
Not a question, but I've enjoyed being able to duck into the parking lots a little bit and look at the growth and watch it going. Also really appreciated the video of the inside and where that's going. Thank you very much.
No problem. And hats off to ONK. They did all the work with the video. All I had to do was just speak. So.
You spoke well.
Thanks, Johnny. We'll coordinate a time for a tour here towards the end of the month, and when we get some consistently dry weather, hopefully. That ends my report. I'll turn it back over to you for any comments.
All right, well, thanks, Johnny, and congratulations, Jen, congratulations, Emily. Thanks for being here tonight, and thanks for being here for these kids. Great work that you're doing. It's nice we could see you honored tonight on Teacher Appreciation Week. It all worked out really well. So congratulations to you. Thank you.
It sounds like you're going to go out and do pictures, right? Yes. All right.
Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? Very good. Thank you. We have one speaker tonight. Catherine, is that correct?
My audience.
They did.
I was just nervous all day for nothing.
Great, welcome.
Thank you. The timing of this, having it, Teacher Week, which I hadn't even thought of. I had planned this day before I knew that teachers were being recognized, so it's amazing. My words are, I think, right in line with it. So I just wrote a little thing. It's way under the 3 minutes. So it just says, as I stand before you as a proud parent of a senior about to graduate, I felt compelled to share my thoughts on my son's journey while attending Portage schools. Of course, my perspective is as a bystander of a loving mom who has watched from the bench as my son has done his best to navigate his educational years from kindergarten to now senior year. So many parents understand not all children learn the same, and my son was no exception. Very early in his school career, it was apparent that the traditional school setting was going to be challenging. Fast forward to freshman year, he was like many, doing the best they could during COVID, and I could see he was becoming more and more disenchanted with school, and his self-esteem was negatively impacted. His sophomore and junior years only compounded his frustration and lowered his self-worth. As a parent being a spectator, watching my son lose his vibrant smile and self-doubt increase, I was searching for answers from anyone who would take my calls. I had heard about Portage Community while he was a sophomore, but was discouraged by some educators that it may not be the best place for him. Finally, with grades being the deciding factor, Portage Community became the only solution for him to graduate on time. The first time I met Portage Community faculty, I immediately knew my son was in great hands. I, however, had no idea what a transformation I would see in such a short time. His smile returned, his curious mind and willingness to learn all returned within several months. Unique guidance, kindness, and attention they offer has been a game changer to both my son and me as a mom. I wanted to share my story as one of gratitude, heartfelt thanks that we have a school like Portage Community that meets our beautiful children where they are and gives them a second chance to learn and excel as a young adult. Before he walks down the aisle to receive his diploma, I wanted to publicly give a shout out to that amazing group of educators and administrators over at Portage Community. Thank you for allowing me to say that.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming and sharing that. We're very pleased your son is going to graduate and is off to a good start. Very good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay, that's our only speaker tonight, and board trustees.
Before our one public speaker leaves tonight. Oh, and there she goes. I'm so glad you said what you said. And we're coming into graduation season, which I think is trustees' favorite time of year. And all those graduations for us are special. The community high graduation is very special. And it'll be a pleasure to see you and your family there and your graduate there.
Thank you. I just couldn't believe how, when I walked in, she said, this is, appreciation for teachers. I'm like, Oh my gosh, I had no idea. And having a format to just share what's been on my heart. You know, of course, the gift certificates will go out this week. My son's got 20 to pass out. But it was, I think it was the public statement that was just brewing within me that to call and at least share with you that not all school systems have a place. And that is just and it was really hard as a parent to drive by here where this is where he was going to be. And so I had to do my own morning. And I thought, yeah, but he's doing his own. And I had to step out of me and just really comfort. And it was a struggle all summer long knowing that he wasn't going to be coming here his final year. But I think they know that over there. And it was lovely. Thank you again.
Oh, yeah, thank you. It's just the, I mean, as a trustee, you become just more aware of the success stories that come out of community high. And it's just a gem and a great asset, so.
Every student deserves to be seen and valued and taught and have the ability to show how amazing they are. And I'm glad.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, any comments from board trustees?
I just wanted to say it was such a treat to be the IB president yesterday and hear all the wonderful things that our students had to say about their educators that had been valuable to them. This is a really neat experience.
I was impressed at the ones who spoke outside of who thought outside of the box, and the ones who spoke about, Portage employees were amazing, but the ones who spoke about educators outside of your typical picture of education was really neat, seeing that, just creativity as they were deciding on who to choose.
And one student was honoring his pastor
Yeah.
as a great educator, so it was really open.
Yes.
But right, it's just a reminder. I mean, we're coming into celebration season. It's a reminder of just how unique that IB recognition is, because each student gets to recognize two special educators.
I had the opportunity this weekend to have a Portage Proud moment. I was back in my hometown in central Illinois, and I went to the symphony that night, and the guest artist was a young man by the name of Brandon Reidenauer, who graduated from Portage Northern in 2003 with my daughter, and he went to the Juilliard School for Music, has traveled with the Canadian Brass, is a composer and arranger, lives in New York, like very accomplished. And I could sit there and tell my friends, I know this guy. So it was just great. And he was unbelievable. The friend I was with said they had never had such a good soloist at the symphony. So Portage proud, hey.
Thanks, Terry. Anyone else? At your place, you have a program from the K-RISA Outstanding Achievement Awards breakfast that was held on April 25th, and it's to honor primarily students who participate in CTE and Education for the Arts. There's over $134,000 in scholarships awarded to 138 students, including 22 Portage graduating seniors. So congratulations to them. It's a great event to honor their achievement. And with that, we'll go to board committee reports.
Mr. President, I will give a brief report from the Owner Linkage Committee that met this afternoon. The chief topic there being looking at the community survey and what can the board do directly to respond to the survey. So we had a good spirited meeting, have to pull some minutes together to take our ideas and kind of boil them down. And then all trustees will get a copy of those minutes before our retreat in 2 weeks. And we'll spend time in that retreat looking at our recommendations. But we have a couple specific recommendations, especially in terms of communicating with the public. So anyway, it's all coming.
Very good, Bo, thank you. We'll move to the consent agenda. We have 4 items on that tonight. First is minutes from the April 15th, 2024 special meeting and regular business meeting. Second, approve the 2025 Central High School student trip to France as presented. Third, that the Board of Education approve as presented the purchase of decodable text, learning library text, and carts to hold the books for a total of $326,306, the funds for which will come from ESSER 3 federal funds. And finally, that the Board of Education approve the Neola recommended policy revisions as presented for policies 1240, evaluation of the superintendent, 2410, prohibition of referral or assistance, 6320, purchasing, and 6350, prevailing wage. Does anyone wish to pull anything from the consent agenda this evening?
Mr. President, I'd like to pull approving 2410, prohibition of referral or assistance. I think we have some additional questions we need answered.
Okay, very
What
good.
policy was that, Emily?
2410, the prohibition of referral or assistance. Thank you.
Okay, we'll pull that from the consent agenda, and administration will get additional information to us. And with that, are there any other exceptions to the consent agenda? Therefore, the consent agenda is approved as presented. And we'll now move to assurance of district performance. And we have a monitoring report, 1.4, ends on page 38. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education accept monitoring report 1.4 ends as a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, Bo. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mark?
I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Pasco to do a presentation on this. This policy is on student success beyond high school, and that the interpretations for this policy have remained unchanged, but the data presented in the report has been updated, and Dr. Pasco will review that with you. So.
Good evening, Superintendent and trustees. So tonight is 1.4. We look at how students have the knowledge and skills necessary to succeed at post-secondary institutions without remediation, and have the employability skills necessary to obtain meaningful employment. You all should have both the slide deck as well as the MR 1.4 packet in front of you. So tonight we go over the following: college enrollment, the time it takes our graduates to complete 24 credits at the post-secondary level. How many are taking remedial classes after graduation? We look at the 5 and the 4-year cohort data for graduation and dropout, and then we compare that to our comparator schools for the 4-year data. And then we get into how many of our students are enrolled in CTE. And then we look at how well they did in the previous spring cycle on ACT work keys and career readiness. So let's dig into it. So busy slides on this 1.4, but again, it'll be a lot easier to see in your packet. This first data set, we look at college enrollment on data sheet 1.4.1. All data, again, is pulled from high school data, as you know. So here we look at PPS graduates over the previous 3 years as well as state data. And the top table shows the percentage of PPS graduates that enrolled in a 4-year college, community college, or any type of college within 6 months after high school graduation. We look specifically at the class of 21, 22, and 23. So you can see PPS dropped in the percent enrolled in any college type from the previous year, and so did the state. But we're still about 18% above that state average, 71% compared to 53%. In the middle of this data slide, we also look at the 3-year weighted average for the percent of students enrolled in any college type, and we see that 74% of our graduates enrolled within 6 months, where the state showed an average of 55%. So still feeling pretty strong. The bottom left graph, we see that the percent of college enrollment continues to increase in any college type beyond that 6-month range. So as we've said in the past, not all students are ready to enter college that first fall, post-high school graduation, or whether it's taking a year off, whether it's getting themselves in a better financial situation with work prior to enrolling. So, but you see that steady increase, and it holds true for both 4-year college and community college enrollment. And that's something that we've seen similar in the past on this report. The next slide on data sheet 1.4.2 looks at the time it takes students to complete 24 college credits. Specifically, we look at the percent of students who earn 24 credits within 12 months. So that's set by the state. They determine 24 credits as a full college year, or if you look at it, 12 credits per semester. So that's the definition. This helps the state track pace as it relates to credit completion. You can see the class of 2022 shows a slight increase, 2% from the previous cohort. And the above table shows 50% of PPS students completed 24 credits within 12 months post-high school graduation, while the previous year we showed 48%. We remain above the state by 13%, but we are still shooting to get back to that about 20% above the state pre-pandemic numbers that you're used to seeing in this report. Lastly, on the slide, the orange box at the bottom there is just another way to highlight the percent of high school graduates who obtain 24 credits within the 12 months. All right. Looking at 1.4.3 in your packet, we look at the percentage of students taking college remedial classes, which the state also tracks. The colleges report to the state what courses they deem as remedial, and that's what this data is based on. So the top three tables show this data for all students and groups of students for the class of 20, 21, and 22. Most of the subgroup numbers are small, so we can't put a lot of weight in them when looking at comparisons, but it is data that we keep an eye on, as you know. There's some positives here, as all but one subgroup show as taking less remedial courses than the previous year. Again, we've presented on some of the reasoning why we have the percent that we do in terms of remedial courses taken, and that's specific to that first year experience course at KVCC. It's one that we don't deem or would define as remedial. They do, it gets reported to the state. Our students feel it's a good experience for them. They don't know that it's remedial, but it factors into all of this. But we are down overall by 7% from last year and down 8% from the 2020 cohort, meaning we have less kids going on and having to take remedial classes. So that's a positive trend. At the bottom, we break down remedial courses by subject, and we see a slight increase in reading and then a slight decrease in math and significant decreases in writing. So those last two in math and writing, those are all positives. The less percentage of kids taking remedial classes means we're doing our work here before they go off. We look at the next slide. We look at our 5-year cohort graduation and dropout rates over the last few years. Our 2021 graduates were at 97.95% graduation rate, and our 23 graduation rate was 97.23. We're well above the state average for the 5-year cohort, which was around 84%. As for dropout rates, that's missing an expected record. We had an increase to 2.25% for the class of 2023, and that's up from 1.06 from the class of 2022. But if you remember last year, we saw that cohort moving through in the four-year cohort data, so they're just getting moved now to the 5th year. So eventually they will fall off. And that was 2.23 last year when they were considered in the 4-year cohort data. We're still below the state, which is typically around 11%. We'll look at the 4-year graduation and dropout rate on data sheet 1.4.4b. PPS has held steady around 96% for its graduation rate as it relates to 4-year cohorts compared to the state, which is 82% for the class of 2023. Those that did not graduate within 4 years are put into one of 3 categories, as we mentioned in the past. You can see in the above table, those categories are either dropout or off-track continuing, meaning they could have taken some summer school or virtual classes and then moved into the 5-year cohort. And then the third being students who earned their GED. As for dropout rate for 4-year cohorts, we have decreased to 1.6% from 2.23% from the previous graduating class, which we believe were impacted by the pandemic and some of our students getting behind. So that's trending in a more favorable direction for us. We have some really tall, skinny bar graphs here. And I'm sure there's maybe a different way that we can present this. But now we look at comparator school 4-year cohort graduation rates. We can see how PN and PC compare to the 11 other comparator high schools. Schools are listed by alphabetical order, and the first 2 high schools are Portage Central and Portage Northern. Each school has 3 cohorts shown in the bar graphs representing class of 21, 22, and 23. And both PPS high schools had a graduation rate of over 95% for 2023, And amongst our comparators, PC was at the top at 98%. Next was Granville and Zeeland East at 97, Huron Valley, Lakeland, and Midland at 96, and then Portage Northern at 95%. As for our CTE, our career and technical education data, you can look on data sheet 1.4.5 in your packet. We're looking at the percent of PPS juniors and seniors enrolled in any CTE course, which includes EFE. These courses have, again, mostly been switched to CTE, but all data is pulled regardless of the classes being labeled CTE or EFE. Here we see that 38% of our juniors and seniors are enrolled in some type of CTE coursework. These numbers have stayed consistent over the years. There's a handful of classes that provide a license or certification, such as nursing, culinary arts, information and tech. You can see the breakdown on the charts at the above slide. But essentially, we saw a slight decrease this year with 4.4% working towards the license of cert. I believe it was somewhere around 5.7% up on the slide from the previous year. Additionally, we have around 8% of our juniors and seniors enrolled in courses in which they perform work in industry, such as dental assisting, law enforcement, medical first response, and that's some of our co-op workers as well. That's an increase from the 22-23 school year, and again, the new CTE center is set to open, I believe, in the fall of 2025, which most likely will draw higher interest in the future, as it will all be centralized and have expanded course offerings for our students. Lastly, we look at ACT WorkKeys National Career Readiness Certificates over the last 2 years. There are 4 levels of work readiness in which students can achieve, those being bronze as the lowest level, silver, gold, and the highest being platinum. The class of 24 had 94% of all students receive a work readiness certificate. That's the same as the class of 2023. So you'll notice the class of 2022 had lower numbers due to testing being optional in that spring of 21. So those numbers are not a true representation of that entire class, because that was around 2/3 being tested, and I just want to say that again. I know you all know that, but it's important to note. So the classes of 23 and 24, they had close to 100% participation rate as testing requirements came back into place. So difficult to compare back to that 2022 cohort, as there was more than a 200 student difference when we compare. So we really look at 23 and 24, and kids are doing very well there. All right, that's all I had for you this evening in terms of presentation and data. Any questions or comments? I'd be happy to hear them. If I don't have the answer, I'll definitely jot them down and take them back to the team and get you the response that you need.
Any questions?
Well, sure.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, not questions, but more comments. Yeah. So I have to get in the commercial announcement about finishing the 24 college credits.
Yeah.
There are more than a few kids who graduate from Portage who have 24 college credits the day they start college because they got them through the IB program. So anyway, I just want to note that a lot of kids, a number of kids, come out of here with those credits preloaded. So the data on, we have somewhat fewer kids going to college now, but those that do go take fewer remedial classes. And it could be that those two things are linked. And this is, right, this age-old discussion of, some kids are not going to thrive in a college setting. And so, I mean, what could have happened there is some of these kids are not going to college perhaps appropriately, and they're landing in another setting, and the kids that are there, have less a need for the remedial. So I think that's an interesting kind of play between those two measures. And then the third thing, the graph you showed us that had the really tall, skinny bars, I think that's a great graph because it shows that the scores between all those schools are pretty close. And sometimes when we show that data, but we chop the bars and just show the tops of them, it looks like there's a huge difference. But I think this gives just a better sense that a lot of these districts that look like us all have rates.
These are all wonderful communities, and as we know over the years, this is a very competitive comparator group. So to know that we're right towards the top, even if we were to combine the two schools, it says a lot about what we're doing at both high schools and all the way up. So it's definitely favorable knowing who's in that comparator group.
Mr.
quick highlight, as he mentioned, not everybody is designed for the college experience. And I appreciate seeing the CTE classes, the number who are able to use that to, as you said, perform work in the industry. And that, I believe that highlights the importance of the EFE, the CTE, or the early middle college, that students graduate from that with the certificate they need to land a full-time head of household wage-earning job. And we provide that. That's a good thing.
And we got some feedback through our community survey on that. And the response is, yeah, that is available. And some of it's available right here in the district, and the rest of it is available through the countywide cooperative or efforts through KRESA that we've all supported through a tax a few years ago. So
I've personally seen the results of students being able to take that route, and it's amazing.
I would, one final comment, is that I actually, all right, this is like choosing your favorite kid, which is like dangerous ground to get in, because all of the ends, all of the 1.1 through 1.5, they're all good reports or kind of highlights of the year for us. But in a way, this might be my favorite, because I can understand this stuff. I mean, these are kind of tangible graduation rates, CTE enrollment, remedial classes.
I would have thought you would have said this was a close second to 1-1, but you surprised me a bit.
When we do 1-1 next fall, I'm going to be back on the 1-1 bandwagon.
I'll be here. I'll see you then.
Favorite changes of the situation.
I mean, but, I mean, and 1-1 is 1-1 for a reason. I mean, we've kind of, that like rises to the top. But you could also make an argument that this one, some of these indicators are just, they're really important. I think most people intuitively understand them. And so, maybe it's 1-1 and 1-4 kind of.
I think this shows a little different side than 1-1. 1-1 looking at growth and looking at just strictly academic achievement. Here we're looking at what kids can do outside of those measures. Resiliency, how they handle coursework, how they prep for examinations and assessments. So all the other things that are non-high stakes related externally, it just shows our kids are prepared and they're ready to take on, for the most part, what their next step is. And you made a great point, you too, Kim, about making sure that we're setting them up for success in whatever their interest track may be. I think that's extremely important to, determine and to factor in, how well they'll do after they leave us. So, and with these other programs opening up, it just opens up more avenues for people to follow their interests and passions, to have a good quality of life and have some success after PPS.
The goal, I love college. I'm in it way too much, still. But the ultimate goal is success in life. And that's where we're going.
Looking ahead, as far as increased college enrollment, limited reading that I've done is that throughout the state, enrollment for next fall is up. Have you come across any stats on that?
I mean, we could dig into more of the statewide stats, but I would just suspect that, we saw that dip coming out of COVID because kids, potentially may not have wanted to pay for what the experience was going to be. And so whether they took that year off or whether they just took a few classes at, say, a community college versus going to a 4-year, maybe that's part of the rationale as well.
Yeah, and no need for additional study. It was just curiosity.
Yeah, we'll definitely take a look, see what's going on statewide versus just internally here. Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I got a feeling it's going to be approved. Thank you very much. All in favor of approving monitoring report 1.4, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion approving the monitoring report is complete, and we'll now move to our next assurance of district performance, monitoring report 2.9, emergency superintendent succession. A motion, please, on page 53.
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education accept monitoring report 2.9, and it is, I flipped my page over too quickly, long-term asset planning. correct? Or emergency superintendent succession as a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Keith. Mark?
Well, this isn't nearly as lengthy nor as exciting as the previous report, but it really addresses the fact that if something were to happen to, in this case, me, we have at least 2 people that are ready to step up and are familiar with board operations and policies, and Johnny Edwards and Michael Pasco, and then also the fact that Kelly Jensenis is also intimately involved in the development of some of the language and the results collection. So it's essentially an unchanged report from last year, and as usual, the organizational chart showing the makeup of our executive leadership team and who reports to whom is included for your information. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mark? Good report, Mark. All of those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.9, emergency superintendent succession, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes and the monitoring report is approved. We're now moving to page 58, monitoring report 2.11, long-term asset planning. Is there a motion, please?
Yes, President Van Antwerp will make the motion that the Board of Education accept monitoring report 2.11, long-term asset planning as a reasonable interpretation and evidence of compliance with policy.
Thank you, Keith. Is there a second? Very good, thank you. Mark?
Okay, this particular policy deals with our grounds, our facilities, and our infrastructure, and it primarily addresses those issues or those aspects of operations that are funded through our bond funds and the building and site sinking fund. I just wanted to point out that the report contains some historical perspective to each one of these, just because I thought it would be hard just to drop all of those previous projects off, because really we started with phase 1, then went to phase 2, and we're now in phase 3. So I wanted to make sure that phase 1 and 2 and the basis for those 2 phases were incorporated into the report language. So there's a little bit of history on here, especially as new board members come on, so they can better understand how we got to where we are. The interpretations are all unchanged. We have listed some of the projects that were completed recently or planned for this summer that use the building and site sinking fund that our community so generously supports. We've reported on all of those for you from that have been completed. Some of the summer projects are yet to come before the board for approval if the contracts exceed the threshold limits from your policies. So those are listed there for you, as well as the updates on the work that we've been doing at Haverhill and Central L and with our Woodland staff. So those reports should not be anything new in the report, because Johnny's been presenting those updates to you on a regular basis. And I just, the other point I did want to make is we're following with fidelity the bond question and the allowances that were in the bond. But as I've mentioned last year at this time and mention again now, that because of inflation and the impacts of COVID from when that bond was passed, we will have to be going back to our voters to ask for some additional funds to complete all projects. Right now, it appears that we can get through 4 projects, and then we'll have to figure out how we're going to do the rest. But again, we're trying to position ourselves so that we won't impact negatively our current debt millage, which is 6.85 mils. So it's unfortunate we're in that situation, but we want to make sure we deliver to our community and to our students the buildings that need the work to have done. And we'll have more information about that as time goes on, in updating you on where we are with both the projects and our budget. So, happy to answer any questions if you have them.
I appreciate that little refresher on the elementary bonds. And somebody who knows the construction industry told me recently to stay tuned. I guess the price of steel has just really dropped. I mean, and so these things can fluctuate a little bit. And I mean, you've been very clear that, you know, there's going to be some variation. You can't make an accurate projection on how that's all going to play out. But you do feel confident that when we go back, we'll be able to do it under our current millage rate. And I know you can't say that with 100% guarantee, but based on your analysis.
We've been working with our bond counsel and our financial advisor and keeping close tabs of the numbers. And depending on when we have to go, I back and ask for that because there's a matter of timing involved here, project completion, when some of the old bonds fall off and reduce in rate. So a lot of factors involved that we're tracking, and we'll keep you informed as soon as we get to a point where we can say with a little more certainty what our next step should be.
I have to jump in and say this, but the history on the elementaries was when that original proposal was put together, that was to do that project was it a 0.92 or 0.93 millage increase, and we elected not to do that.
Waited a year.
Right, so we waited a year and we juggled things a little bit and kept that without a millage increase, so.
But we also, on top of that, we budgeted and planned for in 2019 dollars for the completion of these. That's when we got all of our estimates, and then COVID happened and, you know, just blew those numbers out of the water. I think prices went up by 25–30% for building costs, and, you know, many of us experienced some of that in other ways besides school construction. So yeah, we have seen the fluctuation. You know, lumber prices for a while were going sky high. They dropped. Steel, as you mentioned, went sky high and it's dropped. There was shortage in the labor force, and that seems to have leveled off a little bit. But our CMs have done a good job in getting workers there. We've had some great experience with our contractors, so we're very fortunate to have good people on our jobs and doing good work.
I would also add that, you know, so last year, you and I think Johnny really walked us through this with a little more of a formal, right, and just to tell us what was going on. And there were some comments in the community survey about this. So appreciate you readdressing the issue and, you know, just staying out ahead of things.
Yeah, as Johnny mentioned in his report, the work for Woodland is a little bit ahead of schedule. We feel we have more solid numbers now, so we'll be able to give you some information about the cost of our first 3 projects and where we are with that relative to the remaining projects, so that we have a better sense of what's needed to complete, you know, all 5 new buildings, and we're renovating Morse Bridge, and also addressing the needs at Community High and Curious Kids.
Any other comments, questions for Mark? Good report, Mark. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the monitoring report 2.11, long-term asset planning, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. The monitoring report is approved. We'll move to our first discussion item, which is the KRESA 24-25 general fund budget. Paula.
Well, Paula's here, but I know you're the expert being on the board.
Well, yeah, I know.
So if any fill-ins that you need help Paula with.
Yeah.
Thanks, Randy, for your help in advance.
Sure.
Good evening, Superintendent Feeling and trustees. Included in your packet this evening is information from KRESA regarding their budget for the 24-25 school year. This was shared with us on April 26th at the business manager meetings that we have on a monthly basis at KRESA. Scott Thomas has included a narrative that covers the high points of his revenue and expenditures, and also a resolution comparing current budget to projected for next year. We We are required by law that we have to pass a resolution to either approve or not approve the Teresa budget on an annual basis, and by law, we have to do that by the end of May. So it's a discussion item tonight. Because we do not prepare this budget ourselves at the district level, we do make a slight adjustment to the resolution stating, that we have a limited view of the budget document, and we've been doing that for quite some time. So we do revise that resolution just to state that we don't have that involvement in it. So this is a formality. I come to you each year with this. Basically know just about as much as you do by reading the narrative. So if you have a specific question, I'd be happy to take it back to Teresa or consult.
Thank you. Any questions for Paula?
I mean, my question is the same as it is every year to Paula or Randy, is if there's any reason you would see why we wouldn't approve this budget. I mean, I suspect you see nothing reckless or irresponsible in it.
Nothing irresponsible, no.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Well, I guess you're up again. The next discussion item is the Chartwell contract renewal.
Included also in your packet is the annual contract renewal process for our food service management company with Chartwell's. Even though we enter into a 5-year agreement, Michigan Department of Ed requires us to review this again on an annual basis, receiving approval from MDE first and bringing it to the board for approval. Every 5 years, we do have to go out for bid. So next school year, not the 24-25 school year, but the following school year, we will have to go out for bid. So unlike the last 2 previous years, there hasn't been a negotiation to the overall price increase. Everything fell in line with the normal 2% increase. So I've included in your memo what the projected overall increases would be for those different categories. This is standard procedure again. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Paula. Nice job. Our last discussion item is the purchase of ELA curriculum resources. Dr. Sheehan is going to take us through this one.
Yes, well, good evening, Superintendent Beeling and trustees. I am here to wrap us up tonight with the recommendation that the Board of Education approve the purchase of ELA curriculum resources for kindergarten through 8th grade from Bound to Stay Bound for the amount of $473,757. So this is our final phase of the adopted purchase that we discussed a few phases ago. So you'll notice on your information sheet, you'll see the first phase and second phase and third. This is the third phase that we are now entering. This purchase is going to provide texts for the remaining classrooms that were not early adopters, and just for the texts that students individually handle. It will also provide us text for 6th through 8th grade to start having a supply that we can have students actually take home with them. Our first initial purchase was just to have classroom sets, but through lots of feedback from students and teachers and our parent survey, our family survey that you'll hear about next month, we actually found that we wanted more opportunities for students to take those home, talk about them with their families, and have access to them outside of school. So that is part of this purchase as well. We really have learned a lot from these first 2 phases, and so that is really the main reason. You have books in front of you, actually. I feel like I'm on Shark Tank. In front of you, because what we've learned is when the books that we were just purchasing that are typical market books, you can see this was used for 1 unit, and this is actually a good conditioned one. We've got pages starting to fall out, the cover's ripped off, and that's okay. They're well loved. But it became an issue when we started calculating the long-term cost of when we are supplying our students with so many books through these units. We really needed to find a better way to make sure they were in good condition. So we started doing a little market research and looking at different possibilities and options, eventually going out to bid with numerous companies. we've looked and handled a lot of their products and found that the Bound to Stay Bound ones are specially made, which I want to tell you a little bit about because that's what comes into the cost. So they are a company that's been around for about 100 years. They're a family-owned one. They use special nylon, and I can't answer questions about the technicality of this, but special nylon reinforced latex saturated material and their exclusive binding. So you'll notice some cool features. You can try to break these books apart. You can, just really, you can step on them. The vendor actually did in front of us. And we were all like, don't do that. But the cool thing about it is they are specially made and they have a certain sewing pattern to them. They have certain aspects where you can wipe them down with Clorox wipes or something else. But they guarantee the book for 100 circulations or 10 years. So if something was to be damaged, if the binding was to break down and fall out, all we have to do is send a picture and they would send us a new one. So they are, they're well recommended even by some of the other districts in our area. We've been very impressed. We handled other vendors' books too. And so with that guarantee, that unconditional book guarantee is what they call it, would keep us from having to purchase more books. The only thing it doesn't cover is if a student literally was to rip a page out of a book. But everything else is covered in the wear and tear. So if we look at the projection of what we would need to do if we continue to just buy off-the-shelf books without special binding, or even some of the cover bound or like extra laminate for binding covers, we would really we would have to spend about $150,000 each time to buy just the student sets. So just in a couple years, if we think about the worst case scenario of books not lasting as long as we want them to, we would end up saving probably $250,000 to $500,000 just in the next 5 to 7 years. So with all that said, we were lucky enough to receive 35J funding, which was a new grant that was put out and we applied for and received the award. And that will actually end up paying for just over half of the purchase. That is more than we anticipated. So part of the funding will come from that 35J, and the other part was already budgeted for in our general fund. So I am open for any questions you may have about this purchase.
Well, just a comment about the program. We saw the program in action at a number of schools when we did our school tours, and there's just a lot of excitement around it. And what was interesting, a number of the principals told us that teachers who weren't initially in this rollout didn't like the fact that they weren't, and they asked to be part of it too. And some of them are doing it, after school on their own time to learn it, and they're very pleased with the program. And I got to see a lesson taught at Haverhill at the second grade the other day. All 3 classes were together, and I couldn't believe the collaboration between the kids and the writing that they were doing is amazing. So
thank you for sharing.
Looks like it's off to a good start.
Yeah, and as I said, we'll share more of our family survey and some of the feedback from students and teachers with you at a later board meeting. But we have been extremely excited about the feedback we have received, and some good constructive criticism too that we're taking into account. So
Well, yeah, just congratulations on the overall smooth rollout of everything. So that paperback version that's in its first year?
yeah, it was used for 1 unit.
Okay, I think that's a really good change.
Slowly we were starting to get a little nervous as we saw, them starting to break down. But we do think we found a good way of really being fiscally responsible for this process.
Yeah, congratulations on getting the grant too. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're very excited about that.
As someone who's had many books fall apart on me, even with very good care, simply by reading them too many times, knowing that students are not as careful with their books as I was, it's a good thing to make sure that they last. And you're right, replacement costs a whole lot more than doing it right the first time.
Okay, my question is, what do you do with the books that you bought last year that are like using it up? I mean, will you eventually kind of fold in some of the better bound ones there?
Yeah, so we have kind of an idea of how we're going to scaffold it so that right now our early adopters that received, and it's really applying to the last 2 units of 2nd grade through 5th grade, because those were our early adopter classrooms that had single textbooks for students. We will slowly cycle those out over time, but they know going into next year, they're gonna continue to use theirs unless something is completely unusable, and then we'll address that. But they know they're gonna go a little bit more time until we can slowly replace those classrooms, but everyone else will move over and transition to these. And then the middle school, we had only bought classroom sets, so those classroom sets will be the first ones that they're loaning out to different entities, besides just the single ones for students, and we went off of our student count to kind of determine that.
One more comment. Having the option for these books to go home now for discussion with parents, for parents to read, to involve. The more that we involve families, the better I believe that students learn. And having discussion both at school and at home about what they're learning just elevates that so much. And I appreciate that this is going to encourage that.
Thank you, Dr. Shan. Okay, we're going to go into closed session. There's a motion on page 85, please.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education move into closed session to discuss collective bargaining strategy as allowed under the Open Meetings Act 15.268, Section 8C.
Thank you, Bo. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And this is a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Mrs. Crawford,
Yes.
Mrs. Navaria,
Yes.
Mr. Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Ms. Larson.
Yes.
Very good. The motion passes, and hopefully we can stay right in this room. And we'll not be coming back into open session to take any action. So thank you very much for being here this evening.
Lindsay probably wants to grab the books so you can